Listen and subscribe to The Table of Truth on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. Welcome, everybody, to The Table of Truth. This is your man, Cam. We are back once again with a Blurred Lines episode where we talk about sci-fi, fantasy, comics, and geekdom. With me, as always, is...
your man, Cam, a.k.a. Comrade Cam.
As well as...
this is Josh, denouncer of all things Nicki Minaj.
Deep cut with the island. And as well as...
the Professor, D, back in the house.
And yeah, man, we're back. We talking about some of the recent going-ons and recent drops of TV shows and movies and stuff. We want to first, we all got a good chance to check out Marvel's new one, Shang Chi, and you know what? I actually enjoyed it a lot, fellas. I was really my bar for Shang Chi was a little low, purely because I was looking at the credits, and so the writer was the showrunner on Iron Fist, whack. He was the writer. he was the writer of Mortal Kombat, whack. And so my expectations were really low. I was like, I like everyone else involved, the director and like the actors and stuff, but I was like, man, you got this white dude that did 2 martial arts based film things, and they were horrible. So I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work. And once again, Marvel pulled it through.
Can I ask a question? Real quick? Third time's the charm. But that's not the question. The question is would this be the equivalent of the Asian community's Black Panther?
100%.
Okay.
Yes.
100%. I think to me, what they try to... I remember this too, because I was talking to one of my friends, and he was very anti this movie before he watched it, and he was kind of like, I was telling him, Marvel's not dumb to like let this fail. Like they're not gonna like let someone like just any like they're not gonna fuck it up. And I think they probably learned from their Black Panther experience where they didn't expect Black Panther to kind of do the numbers that it did. So I know that this time around they're making sure that there's some nuances and some details in there that let people know that they actually know what's up in terms of what they're trying to portray. Josh, how do you like it?
I thought it was phenomenal. As someone who grew up reading Master of Kung Fu comic books, Shang-Chi was a very dry character. And unless you were into the whole spy thing, unless you were into the whole Fu Manchu is his dad, which is racist as hell, but Fu Manchu was his dad, and just all the things that surrounded the character, unless you were into those things, it was an intensely dry read. The action definitely carried the comic, and I think they completely reworked the character so that A, he has a personality, B, it's not dry, C, he's young enough where people who are of a certain age will still be able to identify him. He's not this old guy running around, just karate kicking the hell out of people left, right, front, and center. And it melted perfectly into the Marvel universe. That was the thing that I was most concerned about. They managed to melt him right into the larger MCU, which I thought was probably the most impressive feat of all the things that they did with that movie.
Yeah, definitely. D'Angelo?
Yeah, I mean, I had no expectations for Shang-Chi because I had never read the comic. I don't think I wasn't old enough to even remember that where the character first appeared or ever, so I had zero expectations, and I watched it and thought, oh, this is good. This is a strong, solid movie that's presenting a new aspect or element of the MCU, which I think no, I'm more willing to say these things out loud, but their franchise and the storytelling and the way they make their films is largely formulaic. So, when you get to a point where you have a Black Panther or Shang-Chi or Guardians of the Galaxy, these stand out more because they feel like the filmmakers behind them or the writers with the pen are trying to do something a little bit more idiosyncratic and not just sort of, put their a little bit of color on an already painted mural. It's like they're really trying to do something a little bit larger. So I enjoyed it. I thought the action was solid. It felt like the third act was going to fall apart for a second, but they managed to kind of pull it back. I thought the deconstruction of the Mandarin was well done. Of that comic figure, as important as he's been to the Marvel Comics overall, it hasn't been said out loud how problematic his name is. And so I thought that was one of the really solid things about the movie is finally dispatching, even the Mandarin himself is kind of like laughing at the idea that, this name that is they associate with chicken is now striking fear in the hearts of ignorant Americans. So like that was a really solid thing.
And Trevor Slattery. Oh man!
The Planet of the Apes, man, I could not stop laughing at that. Like how he says, and they actually taught those apes how to act. It was blew my mind. So he was
Ben Kingsley forever.
Yeah,
forever.
They did a good job of kind of like making up for the Ben Kingsley's the Mandarin in Iron Man 2, and they kind of like they bookended that, which I thought was really cool. The other thing they did really good is they did a good job of adding in Asian culture details into the film. So say, for instance, before they walk into someone's house, they take their shoes off and then they come in. They have a family meal and like the grandmother is there. She's kind of like the main hub of the whole family and that kind of stuff. So they did a lot of good, like little small detailed touches that I thought were dope that kind of lend to the credibility and authenticity of the film. And so that way, like for other folks that know that these are parts of their culture, they would definitely lean into it and be like, oh yeah, that happens at my family. Like those types of things. Much like how in Into the Spider-Verse with Miles and how his mom was speaking Spanish and English. And if you've been around a Spanish speaking household, they switch that shit interchangeably.
Let me interject something too. You mentioned something about culture and how the Asian community can relate. Now, I was hearing there was some backlash for the movie from the Asian community, and the people that were in support of the movie was just like it just sounded like BS, and people were just hating. But I did notice how the Asian community rallied around the movie. Like I heard outside of my core group of Marvel friends, a lot of people that I didn't know watched comic book movies or into like Marvel stuff came up and was like, hey, Shang-Chi is really good. You should watch it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And the second thing that was popping up on my timeline was the main characters who's played by actor Simu Liu, if I'm not mistaken. It has a thread of stock photos that people always bring up. So he has a bunch of just random stock photos of doing the most random activities, and he himself tweeted it out and was like, I hate it here. So I thought that was really interesting. Two things that were not a part of the movie, but somewhat related that brought my attention to this film.
Yeah, the other third thing would be the kind of like, Black Twitter is always mad about something, but Awkwafina is one of their favorite punching bags because of her quote unquote black scent. And she is a Asian woman that grew up in Queens around the hip hop era. I'm not sure if you've met people from Queens, they might have that accent, but I understand where they're like that comes out a lot now, where I think a lot of people are mad about that. Now I know I saw that as another smaller backlash as well, because I think that, again, as Black folks, we know that we do what we say and do is popular in pop culture, and then when we see that reflected back to us, we feel some type of way, wrongfully or rightfully, and so that always comes back up.
That's the main concern.
Yeah, and I saw that intersection, which I wanted to point that out. Like, I wrote that down. Like, I'm noticing more and more with films that involve Asian American specific culture. There's always this depiction of an intersectionality with hip hop or hip hop culture, and I noticed that in lieu of there not being many African Americans present, I don't even remember one character in that movie that was Black, but you still had that sensibility there, the dress, the way that people speak, the presence of Awkwafina. Honestly, Awkwafina, I'm just learning about her from this movie, so I can't speak to Black Twitter's beef with her, but I can see it now in retrospect.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, outside of New York, it lands a very particular way. But if you grew up in New York, especially if you grew up in the 80s, like if you grew up in New York in the 80s and 90s, Asian kids and Black kids were the first generation of kids, sort of, and the Hispanic kids. We were the first generation of kids who were like, all right, I'm going to your school, you're going to my school. Like, there was no Black kids school. There was the end of the Black kids school or the Hispanic kids school or the Asian kids school. You had everybody going to everybody's schools. And so there's a lot of cultural mishmash there. And so it's not, at least to me, it's not that weird that you have an Asian woman who picked up a lot of our isms the same way that you have a lot of Black kids who speak white, which is just like bananas to me that that's even a term.
For sure.
Like, growing up in a Caribbean household, my mom was not playing that. She was like, yo, you speak properly or I'm going to punch you in the neck. Like, straight up. So,
like, what is
so it was like,
Yeah.
So, and she was very big on speaking the Queen's English. So there was a lot of that, growing up. Yeah. And it's just, to me, it's silly. It's like, we don't have ownership on diction. You know what I mean? Like, you want acceptance. It's funny, you want acceptance, but then when you get accepted, not in the way that you want, you get accepted, but it's a problem. You can't have it both ways.
I'm going to say this. Sorry. The thing about Awkwafina is like, that was a thing in New York. Like, I mean, during the 2010s, hipster rap, everybody, there was an Awkwafina in every circle. Yep.
Exactly.
The thing that gets in our crawl is that she gets paid to do what we've been trying to break in the industry for. Or, we've been doing on a natural, but she gets famous for our shtick or our thing. But it's weird. It's funny that it's coming to light now because we all knew, like, this is what her shtick was. It's just funny now that it's becoming more in light. I was like, y'all just finding this out? Like, she's been doing this for a long time.
Exactly. And also, I mean, especially for, on credit to her, she was in, like, Jumanji. She was in Crazy Rich Asians. I think she's coming up in the new Little Mermaid live action, if I'm not mistaken, with Chloe. The other thing too, going back to Simu Liu, like you're talking about with his stock photos thing. So the new thing now is because he's new famous, right? So he's been a normal ass actor doing stock shit, commercials, random shit. So now that you're Marvel famous now, so now everyone's going back through all your old shit. And so he had some questionable comments in a Reddit post 5 years ago that started to resurface. And so, like, that's another conversation because it goes back again, internet is forever. So, you've only been famous for the last 3 months, but you've been in the internet and everything else for a long time. And there's always those trolls that are going to try to find something to stick it to you or whatever it is. And so he had an earlier meeting scandal with what he said about China and some of the comments they said. And then this is the second one I saw just recently. But yeah, it really is interesting how, like, you have the film itself and then you have the people in the film and then the different things that happen to people while they were there, that the backlash or whatever that is. I was just happy that people got to see Tony Leung and freaking Michelle Yeoh at a large scale.
Yeah, they were the highlights.
They're straight up legends, and like more people need to know who they are, period. So like that's awesome.
Agreed.
Like they got to see that, you know.
I 100% agree with that, and I thought that they were especially what's the actor that plays the Mandarin? What's his name?
Ben Kingsley, the Mandarin.
The real Mandarin.
The real,
the original. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Tony Leung. Tony. Yeah, he's dope.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah,
I was like, Ben Kingsley. I was like, everybody knows him.
No, we will refer to him as Slattery from.
Trevor Slattery.
Trevor
Slattery.
That's Slattery. So yeah, but no, it was
and Morris. Don't forget Morris.
Oh God, Morris.
Morris was awesome.
AKA Disney the Temple selling some toys this Christmas.
Exactly. You already know.
Yeah,
it's like the next phase in Baby Yoda obsession. That's why they gave him a regular name, Morris.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't call him eyeless pillow rat. That's what he really looked like, an eyeless rat the size of a pillow with wings.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's comedy because like I said, this is literally just happening right now. So Simu Liu had posted something about on Reddit. He basically gave a take, and it's surfacing up again. But it is interesting to see what like in this age of social media now, where it's just like, yeah, you know, you've only been famous for 3 seconds, but you've been online for the last 20 years or 10 years, and people are going to just pull up as much stuff as they can to kind of denigrate you or whatever it is, and be like, oh, this you from 7 years ago.
Yeah, but even now, because they're more popular, they have to be very warded and guarded about what they say and how they say it now. Just a quick little small example. There was a documentary Vice does this series, Dark Side of the Ring, which is a documentary series about basically the dark side of the professional wrestling, different topics. And so there's one that aired about a plane ride where Ric Flair basically sexually harasses this woman, and he's like doing the helicopter with his penis and like holding her in the corner, and one of the wrestlers is like, oh well, that's just something Rick does for the boys on every plane, and if you got offended by it, that's just I got a ponytail and people are offended by it. But anyway, he said those remarks, and he's employed by a wrestling company currently as like an agent. And literally the next day, it's like, yeah, he's suspended indefinitely, aka he's fired because of those comments, because he just came off as insensitive. But again, someone who's not even on the level of a Marvel actor is, in terms of popularity in the space that they demand in pop culture, made a comment on a documentary. The next day they're fired. Like it's all of it.
Well, I mean, the upside, the flip side to that is the comments that he made were pretty much like, "Yo, this was my." This is the interesting bit. He's relating, as I read it, he was relating stories about his parents' experience in mainland China as they were coming up, and so what they told him is what he told the interviewer. So to me, it was more like, yo, this is autobiographical. It's semi-autobiographical. This is what my parents told me their life experience was coming up in China. So it's not like I'm being hectic for hectic's sake or spouting an opinion. I'm giving you, secondhand, but I'm giving you an account of what happened while my parents were coming up. Like, this was part of the reason they left mainland China to come here. It was because things were hectic. So, I mean, it's sad that they think that it's all of that. And I read something else about how his comments have threatened whether or not the film's going to be released in China. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think there's a definitive answer to that yet. I don't think if they figured out what that is.
Because that movie is going to bank out in China. Just all the cultural touches that we talked about. Totally. That movie will make so much money in China. Wow. It would be a shame if they have to pass on that.
Yeah, and so I think that's the thing. The newest one that just popped up just like literally today or yesterday was it was a Reddit post that he did I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was basically about pedophilia, basically. And he was like, he's a Canadian actor, and he was in a role where he was a pedophile. So he did research, he had to do this and all that kind of stuff. And so he was talking about pedophilia in a way of how he learned it through this role and all that kind of stuff. And if you read the actual post, it's not really that bad. It's not like, it's basically having sympathy for a pedophile, like saying like, there's a reason why they're like this, blah, 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 blah. It's something that, you know, it might be a controversial take, but it's not anything crazy.
Right.
But however, in the context, in the paradigm that we're in right now, you know, in that quote unquote cancel culture. Being
an apologist, this is not a...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's frowned upon.
I watched,
I get it.
Vox's Explain series on Netflix.
Why would you do
really
that?
Good episode. It's actually really good. But like their Vox the website, Vox the video shit is really good. I will contend that. But Fox Explained, they did a good episode called Apology, and they talked about how in this era right now, a celebrity or someone of fame can do an apology that's a lot easier to do than back then. So back then, in like the 80s, 90s, you had to go on television, you had to like sit down with the interviewer and have this whole big old apology tour and all that. Nowadays, you can literally make a post on social media and just put it up, and then that's all you have to do. I mean, you might have to do extra or whatever, but it's a lot. The reaching your fans to quote unquote apologize for something is a lot easier now than it was back then. Mm-hmm. But the difference being is like there's more random faceless Twitter fingers that want this like, oh, hold him accountable for, you know, this whatever. I can't believe we said this, you know, 12 years ago about this one person demographic. So it is interesting when as people get more famous and then people try to take them to task for whatever they said randomly. Like this is literally the 170th podcast episode of the Table of Truth in general. I'm sure in the 170 episodes we had, I probably said some dumb shit in episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So future Cam, when you're a senator and this comes back up, just own up to it.
Yo, so I'm gonna piggyback off Cam's comments because if I ever become famous, I personally wonder what the backlash will be when they look at my Twitter posts and when I tell them cake and strawberries are overrated. How much hell I'm going to go through?
Well, it's more the candy corn than the cake and strawberries thing. I think personally,
I got a lot of videos coming.
The candy corn slander, I think, is gonna that might affect your popularity a little bit.
I'm willing to die on that hill and stand on it. So I tell people I welcome it because they look back at my tweets. Oh Lord, you know, especially on the West Coast Avengers.
Be like, Governor Collins, in 2017, you said that you fucking friend. Is this true?
Yep.
By the end of this, 100%. Before this podcast is over, I probably will have said something controversial, at least 5 things. But by the time I become president, it won't matter because I'm abolishing the Constitution. I'm my solo. You know, it's gonna be one of them Palpatine speeches. You know, where I tell everybody it's for your own good, it's for your safety and your security.
A safe and secure empire.
Right,
the American.
But no, I think that's where we're at now, which is really interesting because just understanding that quote unquote cancel culture, where it's like you can't really cancel someone if you don't have power. So all you can really do is yell into the void and try to quote unquote make them feel bad or shame them to death. But in the end, are you really affecting any of their livelihood? Is like they losing money?
Well,
they do whatever, you know. If it's
to a point, the answer to that is yes. To a point, the answer to that is yes, because if you're a public figure and your bankability is based on your likability, as it is with actors, there is the possibility that you know that your ability to be cast in a role might be impacted by the fact that nobody likes you.
Yeah, that's true. Or an image that you portray on the outer realm is not what you are inner. You know, like
you're managing a brand.
Yeah, I know a few actors that they smoke, you know, privately, but they don't do it publicly. So they make sure that their images that come out or video or something like that knows that they don't have any smoking stuff. Which in my head at first I was like, oh, that makes sense because that's kind of the image you're portraying. You know, it's a business. So, but yeah, it is interesting that for It's cool that Shang-Chi is getting a lot of the press that it is, and it's making, because in my eyes, I put it as above, say, like Captain Marvel or Doctor Strange, but then below,
You put
like
everything
Black
above
Panther
Captain
or
Marvel. What are you
Ant-Man.
really saying right now? What are you really saying?
I am not here to rehash my disdain for that movie. I would like to say,
to be fair, I would say I'm 100% with him on that. Like Captain Marvel is probably like the bottom of the barrel Marvel MCU movies, right down there with Dark World and with Dark World. Those two sit down there by themselves. to me, in terms of just like films that I just will never probably ever rewatch. I
tried to watch Captain Marvel again. I couldn't do it. I tried.
Why did you even do that?
Because, man, I was trying to give it a chance. Came out here. I love the ladies.
We did a whole episode of you. We did a whole episode on you trying to give it a chance, and that did not work out well.
It's competent. It just exists for all the wrong reasons, and I think that's the one thing Marvel can look back, or the MCU can look at that film and say, yeah, we did right by introducing Captain Marvel, the character, but we did not do the character any service by making this movie simply a bridge between Infinity War and Endgame. Like, it was not even a good bridge. It was just like, okay, this is a preview to that film, and we know we're getting ready to shoehorn her into this next plot. Like, she's gonna be the ham-fisting of the plot. So now we have to give it reason so it just doesn't come out of nowhere. Because, we didn't want an origin story, but we didn't get enough of it. But anyway, not talking about Captain Marvel.
Hold on, I'll give you my take on this, why I hate it. It's not because the movie is bad. It's all right. It's the fact that they made her more powerful than Hulk. And it didn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
And I was already hating on Captain Marvel already. So I didn't even watch the movie. I was like, I'm not going to like this because she's stronger than Hulk. And I felt some type of way. But I watched it. It's okay. It's whatever. I just don't care for the character at all. When she shows up, cool. We can segue into what if and talk about that later. But again,
good segue.
Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
You know what? Yeah, I refuse to rehash my disdain for that movie. So, with that being said, all of us have watched What If up to now. We have 5 episodes, 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Six.
I've only seen 2.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Very familiar.
Yeah. But the one thing I would say, and for folks that you probably have listened, but What If is Marvel's new animated series. It's done extremely well. I have a problem with Marvel animation just in general because they usually cut corners. They do really cheapy stuff. They usually go for the lowest common denominator. But this time they actually stepped their game up, and they're doing hard hitting stories. They're doing cool animation, top notch voice cast, and they're doing a really good job with it. And I was really impressed from those 6 episodes I've seen. This is the first half of it. What If is firing on all cylinders, and they're having just a lot of fun and letting their creatives and the writers and stuff just really go ham and just have some fun with it. I was really, really impressed by watching all of it.
I'll say this. DC is still top tier when it comes to animation.
Yep, 100%.
Marvel has put a claim to improve on that. Mm-hmm. I'm not ready to say they've topped DC at all, but this What If is really interesting. You can go so many ways with it because I didn't read all the comics. I read a few of them, like Hulkland and Wolverine and Old Man Logan and whatnot. So I'm familiar with the concept, but at the same time, I had no expectations of What If. It's cool that they brought back the majority of the real life Marvel actors to play the roles, such as I don't know why I'm blanking on my man Black Panther's name. Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace. Which was cool. like one of his last roles. Really cool. Some roles I didn't even know they switched because it sounded almost like him. I think Tony Stark is not played by Robert Downey Jr., but I couldn't tell if I really listened.
Shout out to Lake Bell for Black Widow, and I think she did Hope, actually.
Yeah, I think she did.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So with all that said, they've it's what if you can make whatever. I mean, they could have totally went off script from the comics and just created, because it's what if. It's whatever scenario you can think of, which I think opens the doors for many possibilities of telling another story. With that said, I'm really liking, like, I'm not a Marvel fanboy as much as I used to be, but I actually dig this stuff. And I like how it kind of could loosely tie into future movies. Well, we can talk about that in a later down the line. So
no, I agree. I think as someone that grew up with What If in the 80s and early 90s, they've kept the spirit of what If is. Like, the one cool thing about What If comic books have always been that, like, there's literally one moment where if it went a different way, a totally thing would happen. And that's literally how What If comics have always been there. Like, one small little twist could change the whole course of this crazy story. And to their credit, there's only one out of the 6 episodes, there's only one episode that's from the comics. The rest of it are all pretty much fresh and new What If stories. And I thought
which one is the one?
Marvel Zombies.
Zombies.
Oh, right. Yeah. My fault.
Yeah, but pretty much all the other stories are all pretty much fresh stuff that, like, they've never really tackled in the comics. So I was actually really impressed, where I'm like, okay, cool. You guys are really having fun with this, as opposed to just like rehashing things or whatever, and done pretty well too. Like, there's a little hiccups here and there, but even the Marvel Zombies is like, the comics are kind of whatever, but it was the way they executed it was actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
You said hiccups, Cam? Why was Thanos in Wakanda? I don't know. But
hey, man, listen. He had an axe to grind and showed up at the scene of the crime. That's what it was. It worked. It worked nicely. I thought it was definitely.
It's a hiccup that I'm willing to bypass. But me and Pope were talking about this offline. We're like, why the hell was Thanos in Wakanda? Like, didn't understand that logic there. Let it go. Let it go.
And I think the second episode was Black Panther was basically part of the Raptors. He was part of Guardians of the Galaxy that whole night.
The Ravagers.
Sorry.
The Raptors are in Toronto, Cam.
Yes.
They're also the Darkhawk species. But yeah, I thought that was fun. Where it was like T'Challa convinced Thanos that maybe killing everyone isn't the answer.
Well, you know what that says? Thanos is open to a pragmatic solution. Right, it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was cool. I thought that was fun that they did that tongue in cheek.
Wait, who was it?
Yeah, they had that one. The other
that was probably one of the best ones.
Okay, let me say this. What D'Angelo, you included? I mean, you only watched 2, but still, what was you guys' favorite episode that stood out, and why?
Zombie. I would say tied right now is Zombies and Killmonger.
Okay, Cam,
makes sense. I would say Guardians of the Galaxy and Killmonger.
D'Angelo, out of those 2 you watched,
so tied for 3. Sorry,
I saw the first 2 episodes, but I really enjoyed the Black Panther episode. Like, that was my favorite so far. I mean, I haven't seen them all. I've struggled with getting into the show simply because I'm just not interested in what ifs. That's my thing in terms of narrative projection. Like, I've seen these character story. I don't care about what if this happened or that happened, if you threw the rock down the pond and it rippled in that direction instead of the other one. So I think that's the reason why I've kind of like really struggled with what if. But in terms of just at the fact that it does exist, it is much better and much improvement over Marvel's previous efforts at animation. I'm still not totally into that style. I can't say what it is. Cam could probably say it a little better what exactly the style of animation it is, but not that into it. But it looks a lot better than, again, what they've done in the past. So all the stuff you guys outlined, all that stuff is good, but again, for me, it was just more of a struggle to get to the series and actually watch it and accept it as existing. Having said all that,
yeah.
I really did enjoy the Black Panther episode. I thought it was great to hear Chad again. Like you said, rest in peace. It was good to hear his voice to tell a story that was befitting of that character and who he is at the heart of his spirit. I thought, and the dedication, I thought that was great. Like that was cool. But that's about. I'm like right in the middle when it comes to what if they're doing the right things, but I'm still trying to figure out why this exists.
Did you read What If when it was? Did you read What If comic books?
No, I'm not like I've read sparsely Marvel books over time. Like I've read probably more DC than Marvel, but
so you never read What If Professor Xavier became Ghost Rider? With the flaming skull in the wheelchair? Come on,
no, again, those type of stories are not appealing to me. Like, I'm sorry.
What's the other one?
Like, I don't,
Okay, hold on, Josh.
Yo.
Allow me to interject.
Yes.
Peter Parker was Punisher?
Allow me to interject.
Seriously.
Yeah, so D'Angelo,
Go ahead, Cam.
Yeah.
you're into Marvel movies, right? Am I mistaken?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've watched pretty much a majority of the Marvel movies, right?
I think I've probably seen every single film.
Okay, so you mentioned something about it doesn't really tie in to the world of Marvel, right?
No, I didn't say that.
What did you say?
I said that I'm just not, I don't really like the sort of anthological use of the characters and those characters. So these stories are inconsequential. They're not going anywhere.
Okay, let me pause you. Let me pause you right there.
Yeah.
So we talked about favorite episodes. Mine was the Doctor Strange episode.
Yeah.
Spider-Man Far From Home. I have a theory on this.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
So, Doctor Strange is in Spider-Man, whatever the new Spider-Man, whatever. I don't know what the name of it. So Doctor Strange.
No Way Home, yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, Doctor Strange was a little weird in the trailer. A little loosey-goosey, just didn't seem like a very pragmatic, safe Doctor Strange.
Oh, I think I know where you're going. Go ahead.
So when you get to the episode with Doctor Strange, which is my personal favorite because it ends in there's no happy ending. Like you get further along in these what ifs, you just be like, yo, these dudes turned on the Disney switch off. Like,
well, that's depressing. Then that makes me interested in watching it. Again,
so I say that when you watch the ending of the Doctor Strange episode and then you go back and watch the characteristics of this Doctor Strange you saw in the multiverse, will have you start to pondering and start thinking, because I feel like some of these lead up to some interconnections, especially the Doctor Strange ones that leaves the door open for a multiverse. We just saw Loki and the timeline and having all these worlds. So here's my tinfoil cap on. I'm assuming that Doctor Strange we see in that trailer is not the Doctor Strange we saw in the other Marvel movies. It could be tied into this what if.
That's solid. That's a solid and sound way. Especially the way to D'Angelo's credit, that's the one thing that Marvel's pretty good about not making crazy, quote unquote, crazy stories of their characters, right? They're pretty guarded in terms of that. What if is the only safe space for them to let their creators run wild? DC does that all the time. They'll have a full-on section of books that are dedicated to an alternate timeline that has nothing to do with the main one.
Wait, hold on, Cam.
A great example of that.
Cam, not to interrupt. Josh, what did you send me that DC Red Russia, where Batman was a Bolshevik? Red Sun?
Yeah, Red Sun.
One of the greatest things I read where everybody dies. I loved it.
But, and to be fair,
DC,
they go ahead, Cam.
No, that's what I'm gonna say. Like DC will let their writers and their creators play around like that. They'll be like, "Oh, what's your like? Give me your craziest take," and DC's like, "Word, make it happen," and they'll let you do that. Like, there's a Marvel Zombies has been around in Marvel's comics for a while. DC just recently did this thing called Deceased, spelled DC and then ceased, and but it was done really well. And then they legit built out a whole world. They like usually Marvel Zombies, it'll come in here and there, and they'll do like 5 issues here, 6 issues here. They'll do a quick story. But Deceased and on DC, they built a whole world out of this whole zombie type of DC thing, and then had a narrative through the whole thing. So DC, to me, they'll let their creators have some fun with their characters. That's why you see fucking 17 different Batmans and all these other ones. Yeah. Where Marvel rarely ever does. And so What If is kind of like Marvel's playground for those creators to do that. And then there's been a couple times where things that's happened in What If, they'll play out in actually the main thing, like they'll just do a different version of it. I think, but I think in general, like we were talking about before, they'd have like really silly stuff, like, oh, what if Peter Parker became Punisher, or what if Wolverine didn't kill mad people or something like that.
Yeah. Silly, and it's got Jeffrey Wright. It's got Jeffrey Wright. What do you not like about Jeffrey Wright?
Facts.
The Watcher.
Yeah, no, it's not that I don't.
No, I'm giving you a hard time.
No. I know, but I'm just saying, like, I like it. It's just, it hasn't grown on me yet. That's all. It's not high on the priority list. I get it.
Yeah, I get it.
I agree, but I agree with Cam. You'll like the Doctor Strange episode.
Oh, I believe that because I enjoy the multiverse stuff. One of the things about DC and the reason that it's able to do that with its writers because they designated a parallel multiverse or universe where all these things are happening and exist across this infinite multiverse, as opposed to the law of probability of what if. But again, I get that in terms of a space for your writers to play with, giving them a sandbox to play with.
You'll definitely love the nihilistic aspect of a lot of these episodes. There's a lot of definitive, like, the world's going to end.
Yeah. So the craziest thing is just like the Doctor Strange one to me was the saddest shit ever.
Agreed.
It's the saddest shit ever.
I'm glad they went there because that was the thing I was kind of curious about because even with the zombies is kind of like same thing, has like a sad element to it.
Sure.
There's parts of the most recent episode that has sad, but again, me and D'Angelo talk about this all the time. The biggest thing that we don't like about these movies or these the comic book inspired movies is just the consequences are so low. And so in What If, the consequences are pretty heavy, where it's like, one thing happens, someone dies, and that person is dead. And so
that makes it worth it. Yeah.
And that makes it worth it because me and D'Angelo always talk about this too, is like the one bad thing about a lot of the Marvel movies is like you don't really feel that they're in peril. And I think Infinity War was probably the only one where you're like, oh shit, like they're losing, like they lost. Like Infinity War,
which is why I think when Marvel decided to do the End series, which was like almost like a What If, but like a definitive end to some of the bigger lines that they run, like X-Men: The End. Both times they ended it. The first one was great. Second one was good, but the first time they ended it was just like
was not good. Yeah.
Oh, they did a third one? Oh, that's right. They did do a third one. It was not good. Kitty becomes the president. I remember that.
Yeah. What I was talking about is Marvel did a series
right into the White House.
Yeah, really.
So Marvel did a series called The End, where they basically did the last story of these characters. So they called it X-Men The End, Captain America The End, Wolverine The End, whatever. And so it started with X-Men, and X-Men The End was actually done really well. Like it was
perfect.
It was. What if on an epic scale?
It left you feeling like this is terrible. This is terrible.
Exactly. Like this is literally the end.
That was called Marvel The End.
It's X-Men The End, Wolverine The End.
Okay.
Technically, they already made Logan The End because old man Logan dies. in the movie.
That's true. Right.
So technically, there shouldn't be another Logan unless they're rebooting his character. I will say this, D'Angelo. Yeah. When you get to the Killmonger one, from the trailer, I was like, oh, is Killmonger somebody else? No, he's still a menace.
He's still the guy. He's still the exact same guy he was.
He's still a menace. But the thing about Killmonger
written by D'Angelo to be
the thing about I was going to say the thing about Killmonger is that him and Thanos are relatable because they have a justified end, but their means to the end is always ass backwards. So Killmonger's response to why he's doing what he's doing is very commendable.
Yes.
But the thing is, he's super OD, and you'll see why in that episode. Because
I like that episode a lot because I like the episode a lot because it stayed true to the character of Killmonger in a different way. And so he basically tries to do his plan that you saw in Black Panther, but he just did it in a different way.
He goes about it completely different.
Yeah, but in the same vein, in the same spirit. And I like that they kept that because it kept the same thread. And so when you were thinking, I'm like, oh man, maybe he's not. Oh, never mind.
Yeah. See, I trust you guys, so I'm gonna check the episodes out because I trust you.
Queen Mother Ramonda getting it on in the battlefield was one of the most gratifying things I've seen in this series.
Did she do the voice?
I believe she did. Yeah.
Nice.
She did.
Oh man, super gratifying.
You'll get every beginning episode. You'll just see that characters the actors in it. You'll be like, oh, they're all in. Most of these people are still in it.
Yeah. I give them a lot of credit because they put a sizable budget to their voice acting. And
agreed.
And it pays. Oh yeah, and it pays dividends too.
Yeah,
it does,
and it pays dividends. Especially that's why I liked about the Black Panther and Guardians of the Galaxy episodes so well because they legit like all damn near everybody's in it. And when Diamond Husband was like, "Oh my God, Star-Lord, I love you," that whole scene to me was I was laughing and like him being a fanboy for the whole episode, just like another cherry on top.
It was great.
Wait, there was one what if where I can't remember, but one of them didn't really show us what was the changing point. I can't remember one. It was very ambiguous. I have to go back, but there was one that stuck out that I was like, what was the scenario that changed everything?
Like the little small point.
Yeah.
Shifted it or whatever.
Yeah, there was one. I don't know if
zombies, Doctor Strange, Captain Britain, Avengers.
I felt like that was one.
Oh, it's probably the second episode with Avengers, or the one with the Avengers. Yeah, probably that one because that one wasn't really explained. It was just kind of like, oh, my daughter got killed, done. As opposed to like, you seeing it. Yeah, it was a very slight thing where you're like,
because most what ifs they give you a scenario.
Hank Pym being the overall villain for all out.
Okay, so no, so the zombie one doesn't really go into it either. Like, how did that start? That's the one, actually, the zombie one. We don't know. We were just told this happened, which resulted in all these zombies. But we don't.
No. The turning point is when Hank goes back to when Hank goes to the quantum realm to go get Janet.
But how did Janet get infected?
In the quantum realm.
How?
They explain that there's a quantum realm virus. That's all it was.
That's not explaining anything. That's just saying this is here's some cheese. They ate it, and she turned into cheese. Like
you know what, D'Angelo? I don't like when you're playing the role of Cam right now. That's a very D'Angelo comment right there. I just want to like throw that out there. D'Angelo always be like, "But why?" It only takes one line of dialogue to.
If it only takes one, why can't we put it in there just so we won't have questions like
100%. You are 100% correct. If they would have put like a little bug came over and bit her and gave her the disease,
right? Agreed. Okay, that's fair.
They could have even said that the virus was precipitated by a time distortion or something, and so when you come back, you're dead, but you're caught between living and dead or something like that.
They threw that term in there like we were just supposed to eat it up, and I was like, huh?
I will say this though. I wish like with the most recent episode with Killmonger, I wish that they would have given me like another 15 minutes worth of episode, because where they ended it wasn't 100% satisfactory. So it kind of felt, Zombies, I could live with.
Zombies need a part two. Zombies need a part two, bro. Zombies doesn't
need a part two. But I feel like where they ended the Killmonger episode, where literally Shuri is in Pepper's office and she's like, "So this is all the information I have on Killmonger. He's hectic. He killed this person, this person, this person, this person, and we should do something about it." And then episode's over. It's like, okay, we should do something about it, but what?
Yeah.
What do you do?
No, I agree. There's a couple of the episodes that, they leave it ambiguous, and it's for their detriment, actually. I think that
the Hank Pym episode, that first Hank Pym episode, I think was another example.
Hey, D'Angelo, also the Killmonger episode, we actually get to see the Black Panther be Black Panther.
Okay.
True.
All right.
So,
see, that's the one that I was looking forward to seeing. Actually, was the Killmonger episode. So I'm gonna go back and pick up where I left off. I think the one I got to start with. What if the world lost the Avengers episode?
That is kind of the weakest episode in my opinion.
Well, I may as well watch them all now. I mean, you guys are kind of.
It's still good. No, don't get me wrong. It's good. It's just the weak of the bunch. Yeah, that's one of those episodes I'm like, so that's how you ended it for real?
Yeah.
Tap in when you get to Doctor Strange one. You'll love that one.
Yeah.
Oh, you love Doctor Strange for sure.
Yeah, but overall, I would say they did a good job. Especially, like, I was really curious to see where they went with this because of kind of like the flow. They went from Wanda to Falcon and Winter Soldier to Loki to this. And I was really curious to see where they were going to go with it. And I think they did a really good job. Jeffrey Wright is awesome as the Watcher.
Yes, he is.
That dude's just always, like you said, like, how can you not? Like, it's Jeffrey Wright.
He's infallible.
Yeah.
100%.
One of the other cool things I noticed about Marvel was, especially the zombie episode, was the kind of nod to Zombieland when Peter Parker was doing his How to Avoid the Zombies, and he had his handheld camera like Zombieland.
Yeah.
So little stuff like that was pretty cool. But like, and also that episode gives light to lesser known characters that didn't get their spotlight in the major movies.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
that episode had Agent what's the chick from
Agent Carter?
Agent
13. Agent 13. Happy. Oh God, from the Black Panther's
Hope
Guard.
Van Dyne from Ant-Man and Okoye from
Okoye. Yeah, Dora Milaje. So there was their Guardians of the Galaxy type rogue gallery of heroes.
A little bit,
yeah. So that was pretty cool that we spun the spotlight on them.
Yeah, it was fun. I think they did a really good job of just like having fun with the universe. Utilizing the assets that they had to a good way. Spider-Man and the zombies was great. Chadwick was great in zombies as well.
4 out of the 6 episodes, I would say 4 of them are expertly constructed.
And
the other 2 were just okay.
Oh yeah, they bounced back between Bradley and Chauncey, I see, in terms of writing. It looks like Brian Hendricks directs all 4 episodes.
Yeah. So it has a good overall arching thing, and they bounce back between writing and directing. So they did a good job, man. They did a really good job.
So far.
All right. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Everybody get their little 2 cents and final words. Cam, you got some final words?
I guess I'm watching a show recommended by Table of Truth panel mate Dwayne. Into the Night. I just got into 3 episodes. It's on Netflix. It's basically about a plane getting hijacked. One of the hijackers is forcing the passengers to fly because he says the sun is going to kill them. And we try to, each episode, we finding out why, and then they meet a cast of characters. It's kind of like Lost meets, I don't know, whatever TV show of like some catastrophe that no one can explain. But it's very interesting. It's subtitled, but they speak English on certain characters. So I'm getting into that. So I don't really have a final word, but that's my final word. Oh, lastly, don't watch illegal streams of Shang Chi that has Cantonese and Portuguese subtitles. So
Josh, final word.
What If is amazing. Shang-Chi is dope. Go see them both. Yeah, nothing special. Nothing special. Just go see both. Do both of those.
Nice. My final word is I was on Netflix perusing through their catalog as one does, and I saw the description for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It is a beloved thing on this podcast. We enjoy the show, and this description was when Arrow meets heroes. I personally was offended and insulted by that horrible description of a really good show.
But like, who wrote that copy, man?
Exactly.
That's why
I was like, yo,
to do that.
There's an algorithm that wrote that. No human being did that.
It had to be an AI.
I was like, do I have any friends at Netflix that I could ask about this? And sadly, I've like moved on to other places. But yo, that I was actually offended. I was offended. I was like, yo, how are you guys? What?
Heroes meets what? Heroes meets what again?
Arrow.
Arrow. Jeez.
Arrow.
I have another final word, by the way.
Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
I would say that Justice League and Batman vs. Superman are trash movies, but Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL are musical geniuses. I could just turn, like, I have Batman vs. Superman on right now in the background, and I'm stressing because I'm like, I really just want to listen to the soundtrack.
Oh, well, just go to Apple Music and look up, and you can cut out all of the visual and
that
all
is true,
and you have it right there. I do it all.
That is very true.
There you go.
It's wonderful.
But man, those two guys are. I mean, I watched 300 Rise of an Empire. Junkie XL did the entire score. Phenomenal. It gets, just listening to it gets you hyped.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
100%.
Junkie XL is a worthy successor, and I think he's done a really good job. He's done a really good job. He makes bad movies sound amazing.
Yes,
he got to get into the orchestra. He's got to put it, like Hans and John Williams.
He's doing that with he did that with 300 Rise of an Empire. It's all orchestral.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, I stand corrected. Yeah, that's
Fine, and then D'Angelo, final word.
Well, a couple things. I do have a final word. I agree with everything about Shang-Chi, and I'm going to get more into What If so that, I can see what you guys are seeing. Right now, I'm kind of feeling it, but I don't 100%. Just one thing to follow what we have been talking about with the streaming wars. So that thing is just like getting even more interesting. I saw over the weekend, not even over the weekend, like at the end of the week. Halloween Kills, announced on Twitter, will be released in theaters and streaming on Peacock TV at the same time. And so I looked it up and didn't remember that Halloween is made by, I believe, Universal Pictures, which is also, they have a partnership with Blumhouse, and they've been doing horror films with them, but that's NBC Universal. So Peacock is benefiting from that content, and it's going to be an interesting thing as we move forward, because I think between HBO Max and Disney Plus, who are kind of had led the charge in those type of releases. Now you have, I mean, Amazon and Netflix were doing it, but in a more subtle way. They were doing it with more independent films or like lower budget films. Now you have like full blown like big budget films getting this kind of releases and across different platforms. So that's going to be interesting.
HBO just pulled all their content off of Amazon too.
Yeah. And I think Matrix,
like last night.
I think Matrix is going to do theater in HBO Max.
Yeah, Dune is doing theater, in which I'm still surprised. I'm surprised that WB those contracts must be ironclad, and they can't do anything at this point. Because I would, after Shang-Chi, I would seriously reconsider for Dune and for the Matrix Resurrection. The Matrix Resurrections actually looks pretty good. But the other last thing I'll say is we had talked about this before going on. I recently watched Candyman, the Nia DaCosta, Jordan Peele film that was delayed last year but recently released. Had, I think, about a 30-day run, maybe 60-day run in theaters, and now it's available via anywhere you can rent it streaming. It's a solid film. I don't want to go too far into detail with the plot because I think everybody should watch it, even if you don't like horror or not, because it has some really strong commentary in terms of how it uses the Candyman myth and parallels that with the ongoing generational Black trauma. And so I know that sounds rather not cliche, but like, okay, you could say that that's happening in Lovecraft country as well, right? Horror being sort of paralleled or turned on its head, representing this ongoing narrative of different examples of Black trauma. But the only thing I'll spoil is those stories in the film are collected as a part of Candyman's hive. You know, there's a queen bee, Candyman, and then there's all these stories who's had a tragic story himself, that figure, Daniel Rosenthal, as a result of racism. And each one of these other Candyman figures get folded into this urban legend, but they all are a part of, Emmett Till. Even some of the more recent stories, that trauma fuels the power of Candyman. So that's a very interesting way to tell that story, and the acting is great. The writing is pretty solid, and Nia DaCosta, for that being her first film, really understands how to use. She really understands how to use spatial blocking to tell a horror narrative, like the compression of the ghetto space, the idea of these spaces being set up and literally ignored to the point where they're so wrecked and falling apart that now rich developers can come in and just redo them and say, hey, your artists can come in and live here for cheap, until we build it up. And then you'll be the pioneers of a new neighborhood. And lots of nuances in that film. So I highly recommend Nia DaCosta's Candyman.
Tony Todd is in it, yeah?
What's that?
Tony Todd makes an appearance, yes?
Tony Todd is in that film. Yes, he is.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
The interesting thing, really quick, the interesting thing I just learned about Tony Todd is that because the original story, the story is based on The Forbidden. The character comes from the story The Forbidden, which was written by Clive Barker, who was an English writer. That character was not originally Black and had no Black origin story. Ellen and all those other things, her being a grad student, going to find camp, all that stuff was real. Tony Todd came up with the backstory for Daniel Rosenthal, and he created that for that character.
Did not know that.
No, did not
the
know that.
director ran with it and was like, "Yo, this is great." Now, his original name for the character was whack. He called the character Granville T. Candyman. Granville T. Candyman, but they eventually changed it to Daniel Rosenthal, which I thought was much better. But yeah, that's my spiel on Candyman. Check it out.
That's dope.
And the original, because the new one is a direct sequel to the original. To the
Okay.
1950s.
Yeah,
So-
the original was fucking scary as shit.
Oh, hold on, Cam, hold on. D'Angelo,
Yes, sir.
this is part of the reason why you should read Bitterroot. Kind of lies in the latter part of the Hive part of it.
Okay.
Facts.
So when you read Bitterroot, you'll find some similarities on hate and bias towards individuals. With that said, I'm still not watching Candyman because I was outside for the first one. I remember that movie vividly. No black person on this earth who's watched that movie will say his name 3 times ever.
Facts.
Ever.
Nope, not doing
5
it.
times.
5 times.
Yeah.
Not
I've
doing
even
it.
shortened it.
Nope, not even doing it.
But I also have this kind of issue with, is it Jordan Peele?
Yeah.
He was the producer. He produced it.
Yeah.
He produced it, yeah. And co-wrote. He wrote it.
Yeah.
There were 3 writers. Yeah.
Just this Jordan Peele, his track record of movies seem to be having a commonality around it. And I'm like,
What do you
I'm
find
like-
that commonality to be?
black trauma. And I'm just like, all right, do something different. That's just my personal bias. Now, I may eventually get to Candyman, but I was outside for the first one. The shit is probably the last legit scary movie I ever watched. Because anybody who watched the first one, remember that flashback bathroom scene? I was never the same. And that shit still is etched in my brain. And people we joke around about Candyman, but we be, as a black community, halfway serious about not saying it 5 times ever.
True.
Oh
It's
no,
true.
and
It's
that
true.
was
It's
very
true.
present in the story. That's why I said it has so many nuances and so many layers, even connecting the history between the original film, which is about 20 years now, and going on 20 years next year, and this film. So you're absolutely right, and also about Jordan Peele in that his sort of staking his authorship in using black trauma in a subversive way, though. I think his depiction of black trauma is sort of taking it back and moving it towards, okay, this is trauma that we're going to own a little bit, and this horror can also be used to turn outward, against the oppression.
And
That's sort of where he's going, but we'll see if he gets there.
And I think it's interesting too, because I remember it was a good interview. He was talking about it, and he was like, he's like a horror fan, and there is a big and sizable and like loyal black horror like community
Very
that
much so.
likes and like.
Oh,
I think that's
oh, yeah.
Very much so.
He's leaning into that, like. But I agree with Cam in terms of the black trauma, and so now it's more about how are you going to be able to use this black trauma in a way that is productive, or kind of moving forward a little bit. And so I think he did a really good job with Get Out. I think Us kind of pulled him back a little bit. Candyman might be the next one where he pulls him forward. But I like that he was like, yo, I like black horror, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to explore all those little different nuances and see where it leads me, whether it's good or bad or whatever. But I like that he was like, yo, this is what I'm writing for, and I'm rocking with it. So
I think in the commonality,
he kind of took a step back.
I still say Us is what Us is trying to be what Parasite really is. So.
Oh, Parasite. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
And definitely there's some legitimacy there for sure.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Agreeing with my bad. I was just gonna say, agreeing with what Cam was saying about, Us. I mean, Get Out. There was sort of like, there was a feel. I wouldn't call it feel good, but as close as you would get to a feel good for the protagonist, right? Because he doesn't die in the end, right? He actually,
he survives.
right? He survives.
Right.
Us is kind of more of a darker twist on that, and so is Candyman. So Candyman at the end, you feel that the power has been taken back because of the way it leaves off. And the last person who gets the last line of dialogue is Tony Todd. And his last line is to the Teyonah Parris character, and he says, tell them. That's all he said, and then it cuts to Candyman. And I encourage you to watch the end credits, at least the paper puppet animation that Nia DaCosta did depicting the timeline of the Hive. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, even in the tragedies that it's depicted.
That's dope. No, that's dope. And I think that's the kind of stuff that we've been talking about for a while in terms of like black cinema, where we are craving, we want, and we appreciate when black auteurs like take it there and do some dope shit. And like I think at the end of the day, like I'm down to watch black trauma, but that shit needs to be dope. It doesn't have to be tropey. It doesn't have to be like, it's got to be good. And I think that I'm glad that they're trying to get into that realm where people are putting dollars behind people that have good visions and are actually doing some dope shit. Because at the end of the day, if we really are going to transcend from these, like, depending on validation from like Oscars and Grammys and all that dumb shit, we have to start like investing in our people to actually do some dope shit. And so like when they do it, we can recognize it, be like, yo, this is like legit. Like you guys, like you're saying, I don't watch horror shit, but you're telling me about it. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should go watch this. The last horror movie.
All the Blumhouse stuff they've been doing. I mean, this is sort of like, okay, you had the Halloween, which this is very similar in that was a direct sequel to John Carpenter's film, and there's sort of been a pattern of those movies recently. But this totally works because we know that lineage and that legacy is still ongoing. 20 years ago, the only difference between 20 years ago Chicago and now is that the Cabrini Green projects are no longer there, or they're now gentrified apartments for so that reality even being shown in the way that it was also just like you can see that Nia DaCosta and Ryan Coogler and all these new, they are the ones who we have been wanting to come to emerge from out in the wake of a Tyler Perry or a Spike Lee or any of these people. Not to suggest anything against those guys, but these filmmakers, they are cut from a whole different cloth in their understanding of cinema. Yeah. And I think that's what's important, and that's what's great about the Candyman and the Jordan Peels and all these newer filmmakers, black filmmakers.
All right. I'll watch it. I'll come back and talk about it. I was in the last official horror movie that I actually watched was Event Horizon, and that shit fucking still scares me to this day.
That one was creepy.
Is creepy as shit, and I realized that is the reason why I don't watch horror movies, because that shit just, and the black guy actually survives, and I'm still scared. So
last horror movie I saw was The Thing.
2011 one.
Kurt Russell and Keith David. In like 1980 somebody.
Yeah, that was a part of Carpenter's End of the World, his Apocalypse trilogy.
That movie screwed me up so, and it's because there's so much implied horror in that movie. Like they don't really show you a lot, and so it makes your brain work to sort of fill in the gaps.
Hey, that's why Carpenter's the master.
And then
I stand corrected. 1982, not 98, 1987, but it's 1982. The Thing.
Yo, that movie did a number on
horror is the worst because your brain will always make it worse than what it actually sees.
The thing that screwed me up the most was the end of the movie, where it's Kurt Russell and Keith David, and you don't know if either one of them is infected, neither of them could be infected, and they're like, yo, nobody's coming for us because they're in the Arctic. I think it was like an Arctic research station. They've been cut off from the rest of the world, and literally they're the last two survivors of this expedition because whatever alien virus, something or the other, has killed the other 10 members of the team. And so they're basically sitting there with guns aimed at each other, and they're like, it could be you. It could be you. Well, I guess we're going to sit here and wait and find out. And that's how the movie ends. I was like...
And there's a background for even the way the setting of that suggests horror, right? They're in the Antarctic. Like, they're, even if one of them is, or both are not the alien, what are the odds of them surviving long enough to live exactly those moments where they're of suspicion?
That screwed me up so royally. Nothing
John
else.
Carpenter, I hate you.
I have watched several horror films since then. Nothing does anything to me after that.
Horror is the horror of is dread, right? Is that it horror really that you can't really put your finger on? It's the horror that, like, Night of the Living Dead was scary because we don't know what the fuck caused people to just rise up from the dead and start eating each other. Like, that's, you don't have, and you don't, as the characters, you don't have time to think about it. That's why those early parts of The Walking Dead was so good, is because we don't know why this is happening. And there's no explanation. So there's no end in sight. So that causes terror.
Yeah, really screwed me up. I have no other films since then. I've watched other horror films that are scary and have laughed because they don't do anything. They don't do anything to me the way that. Like I also saw the thing at a way too young age.
Yeah, and I agree. Like the level of terror and dread is what always messes with it. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Well, you know what, fellas? I like that. I'm glad I'm glad like final words usually is next to 20 minutes because that's just what it is.
Right.
So, but yeah, you know what? Once again, Blurred Lines, Table of Truth. You know what it is. Peace, people.
Deuces.
Peace.
Peace.